This is Lamine Yamal, a 17-year-old phenomenon already seen by most football fans as one of the best players in the game. But that's a massive understatement. This chart tracks dribbles and through balls per game. Through balls ain't just passes. They are defense-splitting plays only the most gifted can pull off. Plotted on this chart, you'll find the game's most unpredictable playmakers. You've got the visionaries, Odegaard, Pedri and Palmer. Down here, you've got the ankle breakers, Vini, Savio, Musiala and Leão. But then, two names pop off the chart. Wirtz, Germany's golden boy, 21 and already cooking. And in first place, there's a kid bullying grown men like it's nothing. Lamine Yamal, a 17-year-old who's not just competing, he's already leading the world's most popular sport in creativity. Not someday, not in a few years, right now. So forget the talk about him not scoring 50 goals a season. What you're seeing is a playmaking genius, not a stat padder. But when I talk about imagination on the pitch, I gotta bring up the most entertaining, most gifted, most natural footballer in history, Neymar Jr. He is by far the most creative player I've ever laid eyes on. Man, this is unbelievable. I do not care what trophies he has won. This guy is the embodiment of football's purest art form. But Neymar and his creativity is not the only crazy phenomenon that looks absurd when you put it on a chart. For example, a while back, I broke down the top World Cup playmakers using advanced data. But then I asked a bigger question. What's the single greatest World Cup run ever recorded? So I went all the way back to 1966. And buried in that data, I found a name. A name that rarely comes up in GOAT conversations, but maybe, just maybe, it should. This chart shows the top 30 World Cup runs of all time. You'll see R9's 2002 dominance. Neymar's underperformance still makes the list. Hazard is in there too. Up in the top 10, there is Messi last campaign, Maradona in 86, and three players from Brazil's 1970 squad, Pelé, Rivellino and Jairzinho, which is ridiculous. But now look at this. The top three runs didn't even win the World Cup. You've got Gerd Muller in 1970 scoring 10 goals in a single campaign. Far from everyone else is Cruyff, changing football forever in 1974. But the greatest run of all time? A Portuguese legend forgotten by time, known as Eusebio. With a stat line so brutal, it still hasn't been matched. 9 goals, 1 assist and 6 dribbles per game. And forget the different era excuse, goal averages haven't changed that much. This was generational violence. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where's Cristiano? For all his greatness, he's missing from history's biggest stage. His highest rated World Cup run, 6.92. And in 2022, when the world was watching to see if he would checkmate Messi, 6.46. With an underperformance so insane, it's hard to believe in. For a guy chasing GOAT status, this is rough. Can you really be the GOAT without a World Cup legacy? I'm not sure, but history says greatness shows up on the biggest stage. Cristiano says he'll be back in 2026. And I hope he does, because he still owes us one legendary run. And if that shifted how you see some of the all-time greats, then you need to hear what the current Ballon d'Or winner has just pulled off. Because Rodri might just be the hardest player to beat in football history. Look at this chart. Longest unbeaten streaks in games played. For perspective, both Ronaldo and Messi managed streaks of around 40 games at their peaks. But higher up, you've got Ricardo Carvalho, who was a brick wall in 2006. Near the top, you have Maldini, widely considered the greatest defender ever, managed an insane 73-game unbeaten streak. Yet, at the very top, breaking a record that stood for nearly 30 years, is Rodri, one of the most undervalued players I've seen in a while. He might look invisible on the pitch, but somehow when he plays, his team just doesn't lose. With Rodri, City became near invincible. Without him, they fell apart. This chart might not be the most impressive, but it should be, because this is what real impact looks like. Some fans thought Vinicius got robbed out of the Ballon d'Or, but let me tell you, Rodri did not steal that award. He earned it by doing the hardest thing in football, never losing. But while some players dominate without ever dribbling, others built their whole legacy on that. A legacy that doesn't always hold up. You see, Everyone talks about R9, Dino, and Zidane as the greatest magicians to ever grace the field. The 2000s are often called football's peak dribbling days. But with fresh Champions League data from 2003 onward, we can finally get a true look at the best dribblers of the 21st century. And what you're about to see might change how you remember some of the biggest legends. This chart shows how often players tried to beat defenders and how often they succeeded. Blue dots, that's midfield dribblers. Red dots, final third dribblers, where dribbling is way harder. Most players either spam dribbles with low success or pick their moments with high success. But only a few legends broke 80% success rate. Can you guess them? You were not touching the ball when they had it. This was Zidane, Juninho and Xavi, with Xavi topping them all as the most efficient dribbler ever. But then there's Robben, a 19-year-old kid who at the time was rewriting the definition of dribbling. He had one move, but no one could stop it. Nearly 80% success at 5 dribbles per game in the final third is absurd. Far from everyone else is 2005 Ronaldinho. Not only did he do a ton of dribbles, he barely ever missed. This was the prime Dino we all remember. Then a name I was surprised to see here, statistically even more unhinged than prime Dino. 2004 Javier Zanetti. Played deeper, sure, but that level of dribbling is still extremely underappreciated. But for all the talk about the golden generation, it was not the past that owned the art of the dribble. It was Neymar, Messi and Hazard. True dribbling demons. No one else combined volume and efficiency like those three. You see, we remember legends by their highlights, but the data, it remembers who really did it every single game. But how do they compare to the all-time greats? Well, I've got data going back to the 1966 World Cup. So let's see not just who the best dribblers of this century are, but of all time. You've got names like Platini, Pelé and Bobby Charlton as good dribblers. Beckenbauer was an underrated prolific dribbler, maybe the most all-around player of all time. You know, they say Bellingham is the new Zizou, but honestly, he's way more like Beckenbauer. Then there's Cruyff in '74, 4.9 dribbles per game at a 60% success rate. Better than I expected? That's an understatement. This guy did everything right. Eusebio in '66 is pretty much on par with Ronaldinho's prime, but only one old school icon reaches modern GOAT levels. El Dios himself, Maradona. In '86, he averaged nearly 8 dribbles per game with a 60% success rate. Unbelievable track record and reinforces his GOAT status, despite a short peak. Now look, this chart is far from perfect, but it paints a pretty damn accurate picture of who the coldest dribblers in football history really were. Before anyone asks, R9 didn't make it here. His World Cup dribbling numbers? Honestly, they're not as crazy as you'd think. When it comes to dribbling, there's everyone else. And then there's Messi, Neymar, Hazard, and Maradona. If you've ever watched them live, you know the feeling. Every time they touched the ball, it felt like something special was about to happen. They didn't just beat their man, they tore entire defenses apart with a glance, a shimmy, a drop of the shoulder. They made football feel like art. And the numbers? They back it up. But here's the thing. Numbers can be deceptive depending on how you look at them. And the most overrated stat in all of football is goals. Fans have been conditioned to think the more goals you score, the better you are. But what most fans don't realize is that there are newer statistics that prove that mindset is far from the truth. Take a look at this chart, for instance. It tracks shots taken. All these players scored 35 goals, but how many shots they needed to get there is the main difference. Ronaldo took 227 shots. Haaland, almost half. This is crazy. Suddenly, it is not about how many, it's about how well. But let's go deeper. There is a goal-scoring stat line where Cristiano just dominates. It is his most underrated skill, and no, it's not scoring, it's expected goals. A stat line that has exploded in popularity but is still massively misunderstood. See, XG is not about finishing, it's about chance quality. Where you shoot and how you shoot. So what XG really shows is who's constantly getting into the most dangerous opportunities. For example, in this chart, we have the top 12 players with the highest expected goals from 2015 to 2020. As you can see, most of these players are between 100 and 130 XG. Kane, Aguero, Suarez, you see mainly strikers because they live in the box. These guys didn't just get handed chances, they found them, like a lion in the jungle, sensing the perfect moment to attack. a sixth sense for opportunity. But then you look at the top predators of football, Messi, Lewandowski, and with a comfortable lead standing above them all, Cristiano Ronaldo. This right here is what made Cristiano different. Not his dribbles or his passing, but his instinct. The ability to always be right where it matters, before anyone even sees it coming. And it is why, in the jungle of world football, Cristiano was always the one at the top. But if you think this makes him the most clinical finisher, you're wrong. Cristiano doesn't even crack the top 10 in finishing ability. So how do we measure true finishing ability? Well, you need a stat the data scientists love, but most fans don't even know exists. It's called XG over performance. Basically, it's the number of goals a player scores above what they were expected to, based on the quality of the chances they take. And once you look at that, the rankings of the game's best finishers changes entirely. Using the same dataset, I created a graph showing XG over performance. Despite racking up chances like the best of them, Lewandowski still fell 5 goals short of his XG. Benzema, Cavani and Neymar, they're all in that same camp. Great at finding chances, but not always great at finishing them. Cristiano, slightly above average, but not what you would call sharp. He's a volume shooter. His finishing isn't exactly out of this world. Moving up the list, overperforming by around 20 goals, Son, Griezmann and Kane. They stand out at shot selection, showing incredible precision. At the top, once more, is the little one. Messi. With 36 goals above expectation, Messi sweeps everyone. With a level of consistency so absurd, it felt like he was not human. But if you thought Messi was unstoppable over those 5 years, just wait until you see the numbers from his peak season. If I asked you to name the most efficient season in the beautiful game, most of y'all would instinctively say Messi's 2011-12, when he dropped 71 goals in 60 games, the most ever in a single season. Looking at his conversion, we get why this guy was melting scoring records left and right. In that season, Messi was expected to score 25 goals. He dropped 40. He overperformed by 14.4 goals. Light years ahead of anyone else. But you don't feel how ridiculous that is until you see it in context. This right here is a chart of the most efficient seasons over the past decade. After that, it's about two things. How many goals have you over-delivered, and how much you squeezed out of every chance. Down here, you've got the volume monsters, taking 5 to 6 shots a game, blasting chances until one goes in. They still overperform, just with tons of attempts. You've got Ronaldo's brilliant 2014 season. With just 32 goals expected, he managed to score 40, almost 8 free goals. 25% overperformance. It was relentless, but it also means he had a lot of chances. Then there's the sharpshooters. These players hit the sweet spot. Usually, they score around 30 goals but with way fewer chances. Take Harry Kane in 2016. Expected to score 20 goals. He hit 30, 10 extra goals. Same with Immobile, Griezmann and Messi again. At the top, you have the guys who might not score tons of goals, but they do it with half the chances. And no one did it better than Dybala. In 2018, he delivered one of the most efficient goal-scoring seasons ever recorded. Expected to score just 10 goals. He gave you 20. You won't notice this when watching highlight reels. But if you sat down and watched the whole season again, you'd see it. And then there's Messi, who over-delivered by 15 goals with a 56% overperformance, setting the standard for what is possible to do. That's not supposed to happen. But as unbelievable as Messi's 2012 season was, it was just the beginning of what would become the most improbable season in football history. Because going into the 2013 season, he did something even more absurd. From November 11th, 2012 to May 5th, 2013, Messi scored in every single league game he played. 21 straight games. Messi's 2012 season was already better than everyone else's. But compared to what came from the very next season, it's nothing. Because across that stretch, Messi's shots were worth 17.6 expected goals. For a normal elite striker, that's about 17 goals. Statistically, there was a 0.01% chance that someone would score 31 goals from those chances. Messi, he scored 42. He provided his team with 25 extra goals. I've spent years of my life analyzing football data, and let me tell you, I have not seen a bigger statistical anomaly than this. We will see 40-goal seasons again. We will see guys break their expected goals now and then. But this, we will need to wait years, decades, to witness this happen again. In fact, you may need a lot more time than that. When you plot this data onto a bell curve, things get sinister. At first glance, Messi doesn't look that far from Dybala. But if you understand the math, your jaw should be on the floor, because Messi's 2013 season wasn't just elite, it was nearly 5 standard deviations above the mean. That means the chance of a season this insane happening again is 1 in 1.64 million. And considering we see about 150 qualifying seasons per year, you would need to run this same experiment 10,927 times. That's 11 millennia, meaning if you started counting from the day humans first hunted mammoths, we'd still be waiting for another Messi. What Messi did goes beyond numbers, beyond logic, beyond anything we've seen from any player in any era. At this level, math stops making sense. You don't just analyze the numbers, you stare at them trying to make sense of something that shouldn't even be possible. From the finesse of his finishes to the poetry of his dribbles, Messi wasn't just a great player. He was the closest thing football's ever had to perfection. So sure, let Cristiano wear the crown as the top scorer. But now you know. The real story was never just about goals. It was about greatness.